So why are you bloated all the time, even if you eat healthy? Like maybe you're eating some really healthy foods, and yet the more healthy that you eat, actually maybe the worse the bloating is. And then you start to think, well, what foods do I need to cut out? And is it the carrots? Is it the vegetables? Is it grains? Is it gluten? Is it dairy? Is it FODMAPs? Is all these foods, what do I need to remove? And maybe you're just getting a bit obsessed about what food is creating the bloating. If that's the case, in this video, I'm here to share with you why that's not the full picture, and that's not actually the question you want to be asking. So I'm a holistic nutritionist and coach, and I've been working with clients in my private clinic around gut issues for like over a decade. And it's also something I've had myself, where I had awful IBS, awful diarrhea, bloating, all sorts of things going on. And the reason that I retrained and became a nutritionist was just through my own journey of trying to sort out my own gut health. And one of the most frustrating things I found in my own journey, but I also hear on a really regular basis with my clients, is this idea of what's the food that's making me bloated? Why, when I eat healthier, are my symptoms worse? Or what's the next food I need to restrict in order to feel better, in order to sort out my IBS or get rid of bloating? And I'm essentially here to say that that's the wrong question to ask. The foods that you eat obviously play a huge role in your gut microbiome and in the health and quality of the terrain, let's just say. But it's not all about that. So let's just dive into that. So typically when it comes to IBS, people tend to go in one of two camps. The first camp is they just think, oh, it's all about stress, meaning it's entirely psychological, and that's one of the main things that you need to address. Or they completely jump to, it's all about food and I just need to restrict more and more food, and then if I just find the magical food and restrict enough of the foods, then the bloating, all of these things will disappear. And it's actually not as black and white as that. So now that I've finally blown my nose, and I'm going to talk you through my approach as a holistic nutritionist. And I've been doing this for a long time. This is how I approached my own health and got rid of my own IBS, and what I've done with over 100 clients and their own gut health. And the first things we want to look at is to really remember that when we're thinking about bloating is a symptom. It's the fruit of the metaphorical tree. So if we are wanting to look at and understand why that's there, we need to understand the terrain its roots are in. We need to go back and remember that our gut health is a system, it's an ecosystem, or as I often talk about with clients, I often describe it as a garden. So it's got different soil and different species of bacteria and all of these kinds of things. And a garden needs a lot of different things in order for it to be healthy. So when you're struggling with digestive issues, and here we're looking at bloating and specifically, and that's happening over and over again, it's not just because you eat this one food, or it's not just triggered off by a specific food or a specific way of eating. So often with clients, I find that they almost become highly anxious or obsessive about thinking about tracking every single thing they're eating and what is creating bloating. And of course, some foods can create bloating. So I'm not saying they can't. I definitely found that with my own gut journey and healing. Certain foods, especially 15 years ago when my gut was in a really awful place, bloated all the time, being asked if I was pregnant, loads of bowel issues, lots of spasms, lots of pain, lots of just little discomfort going on. There were foods that exacerbated that. But also I would get bloated for no reason, even when I never ate any of those problematic foods. And I, for a while, thought if I just restricted and removed more and more foods, then eventually I wouldn't get bloated. But that's not the right approach. That's having a very single focused or a reductionist approach to this problem. And the reason that you're getting bloated, especially if it's been happening for a really long time, you've maybe had IBS persistently for a long time, it will be because the terrain is out of balance, and certain foods can tip it out of that you over the edge and create symptoms. But it's not only food that is going to create that imbalance that's going to result in those symptoms. There can be a lot of different reasons. So when you're thinking about, I eat really healthy and I'm still super bloated, I'm just showing you my own sourdough bread, and you're like, Kezia, I make kefir, I do my own sourdough, I eat grow my own vegetables. I like think about food far more than anybody else I know, yet I am the one who's bloated. Before you start to get really restrictive and really obsessed about every single morsel of food you're eating, you first need to ask the question and look at your whole gut microbiome or the whole ecosystem as a whole. And if you're getting persistently bloated, it's probably because there is imbalances within that ecosystem. Bacterial imbalances, fungal imbalances. You maybe don't have enough of diversity of healthy strains of bacteria. You might be struggling with chemical digestion. All of these things actually have nothing to do with what you ate for breakfast. So while our brain really wants this to be very black and white, meaning if I eat this, this is why I'm bloated. The reason I'm bloated is because of this one food or these 5 foods or these 6 foods. The reason you'll be persistently bloated is actually multifactorial. Some of that will be food induced, but actually some of it will be internal. It'll be to do with the internal imbalances of maybe bacteria, maybe yeast, maybe fungus, maybe a lack of chemical digestion, maybe poor peristalsis and movement of the gut. Like lots of reasons for it. It's not just food. And that's also why in my clinic, I've seen multiple times people come to me with gut issues. And actually, the gut issues in trying to manage and restrict food has led to a lot of disordered eating unintentionally, because there's this idea of that bloating only comes from food I eat. Whereas bloating, when it's persistent and systemic and gone on for a long time, is actually coming from a wider, more multifactorial imbalance within your gut microbiome. Okay, so the food you eat does matter, of course. It does. That's why right here I'm making myself some lunch. I've got some leftover salmon. I'm reheating some boiled potatoes so I get all the resistant starch to feed my microbes. I've got some coleslaw with red cabbage. I've got some buckwheat bread there. Like, this food feeds your microbiome. But when you've got persistent symptoms, there's also other things going on. So this is a funny area because our brain wants it to be really linear and really black and white. And the reality is it just isn't, because the gut microbiome itself isn't very linear and isn't very black and white. It's like a garden. It's an ecosystem. There's lots of factors. There's lots of things needed to make it a healthy, well-balanced place. And also, conversely, there's lots of things that can go wrong to create imbalance. And so when it comes to bloating, what you actually want to look at is not necessarily just fixate on food, but you want to get a better understanding of what's really going on and what does your gut microbiome look like? What is the terrain there? What is that ecosystem? How healthy, balanced, and optimized is that? And is there anything that should be that's there that shouldn't be? So from all the private gut microbiome tests I've done with clients that are often stool tests, where you send off a sample of your poo to a lab and you get a snapshot of different bacterial species, just get a really good kind of functional approach to your gut microbiome, meaning the tests that I run with my clients, and then I've run hundreds over the years, well, maybe not hundreds, I'm not quite sure how many I've run now, a good number, is that what we're looking at is not a diagnosis. What we're looking at is what's going on in this ecosystem. What bacteria is there? What bacteria isn't there that should be? Is there anything here that's growing in really high amounts that shouldn't be there at all? How is all the kind of chemical digestion? Is there inflammatory markers? All of these things. You're not looking for a label. You're looking to witness and expose and address and get information on the landscape. Because when you can understand, okay, bloating is actually the result of what's going on in this landscape. This is the fruit of this soil. So I don't change the bloating by just fixating on little things and not addressing the soil. You've got to actually look at the foundation. So that's why I love private gut testing. For me and my own IBS and bloating issues, it was a real game changer, and it is often the times with lots of clients. So if you've been stuck I generally with gut stuff, the clients I work with, they've struggled for a long time, sometimes multiple decades, and they've tried a lot of things. If that's where you're at, then actually looking and getting some gut work. This is the kind of thing I do with my private clients. I could do in a root session with you or in my Bloom program, and I'll put details in the comments. But finding a practitioner that will do some private testing with you, or in some countries, you might be able to get that through insurance and with your primary care provider. But a lot of the time, because the tests that you're looking to get isn't diagnostic, it's not often covered by general and conventional medicine, but it is really helpful, especially with persistent bloating, where doctors have ruled out any other kind of type of disease that's going on, yet you're still really struggling. Then you can understand how much of this is bacterial, fungal, and also potentially how much of this is stress induced as well. So IBS historically was often just thought of as all in the head, kind of very stress induced, and that's the main reason for that. And obviously that does have a huge role. So how stressed you are, or meaning if you're in a sympathetic nervous state, being in that state consistently reduces your chemical digestion and it reduces your digestive capacity hugely. So stress does play a huge role. But for a lot of people, and we know from research, actually people with IBS are more likely to actually have things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, small intestinal fungal overgrowth, intestinal methane overgrowth, and all of these very practical, very well documented microbiome imbalances that can be addressed. But you first need to know what's there and what bacteria or fungus or whatever it is that's there before you can address it. And the solution is not just to eat less and less and less and less and less foods. That's called managing symptoms. That's not actually making progress or dealing with the root cause. So I hope that has been helpful for you. My lunch is ready, so I'm going to go and have it, and I will speak to you next time.